Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this webinar. We have a great topic. I'm sure you're going to find very interesting and some really fantastic panelists to talk with us about it. Our topic today is 5 strategies necessary for mainframe, DevOps, and DevOps success. My name is Mitch Ashley. I'm going to be host, moderator, and also contributor, kind of all three, I guess. And our webinar today is sponsored by ASG Technologies. So we're going to be talking about some real practical examples and learnings. But before we do that, let me share some housekeeping items with you. We are recording the webinar. All participants will receive an email with a link to the recording as well as the slides. So you don't have to take detailed notes. You'll write some things down, but the slides will be coming. You'll get those too. We'll also be sending a link with that to an ebook report that we're providing as well. So some really good information that you'll get after the webinar. Also, I know all 3 of us that are participating, speaking on the webinar today, love questions. We'd love to hear from you. Gives us an idea of what maybe some of the challenges, gaps, or learnings you might have from your strategies and journeys on implementing DevOps and mainframes and cloud. So let's get to our topic, 5 strategies necessary for mainframe and DevOps success. Our speakers today, I'm pleased to be joined by Anna Murray. Anna is Director of Product Management with ASG Technologies. Jeff Charrington. Jeff is VP of Product Management with ASG Technologies. And myself, I'm CEO and Managing Analyst with Accelerated Strategies Group. Anna, Jeff, welcome. Good to be with you today.
Thank you so much, Mitch. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thanks, Mitch.
You bet. Would you mind just giving a quick introduction for yourself? Tell people a little bit about you today. Maybe Jeff, do you want to start out?
I'll be happy to. I've got what is verging on a 40-year career dealing with enterprise software in large-scale data centers. I bring a history that deep in dealing with not just mainframe, but with the integration of mainframe with all of the subsequent technologies, client server, distributed networking, cloud, and so forth, and have been keenly watching the DevOps space since it first became profiled back in 2009, and see very exciting things happening with DevOps universally and with mainframe in particular.
Fantastic. Anna, how about yourself?
Thanks, Mitch. My career is about 20 years, but and I'll be balancing Jeff on the side that, I came into the industry when the mainframe was quote unquote dying, in Y2K. And clearly that is not true. But what's really interesting, in every step of my career, the mainframe has been in every shop. And, as I've grown through my career, I've really been I've been an agent of change and worked with companies changing from waterfall project management to Scrum or Agile software projects management. And that, of course, led to DevOps, right? And now that I'm with ASG Technologies, we're marrying that with the mainframe and seeing how well that crosses over. And I'm really excited to be part of this cultural change that's happening in the mainframe world.
Excellent, excellent. Well, just a little bit about myself. Like Jeff, I've been doing this a while. I actually started in the mainframe myself at the beginning of my career. And as you mentioned, Donna, I thought like everyone else that, mainframes are going to go away. They're going to be replaced by client server. Oh, no, they're going to be replaced by the cloud. Oh, no, they're going to be replaced by edge computing. No, they're still here. They're very much a part of our world, that's for sure. Well, here's what our agenda is today. We're going to be talking about these 5 strategies, just a little bit about digital disruption in the enterprise, bringing DevOps to the mainframe environment. We'll talk about our 5 strategies, and then, of course, the mainframe imperative. Now, we have Q&A at the end, but please, 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 we love your questions. So enter them anytime into the questions tab of the GoToWebinar software. If it's flowing with our topics that we're talking about, we're glad to get to those questions right away, or we'll handle them at the end. Either way. The other thing I forgot to mention at the beginning of our intro is we are giving away 4 gift cards. So stick around to the end and find out if you're one of our lucky winners for one of those gift cards. So let's get into the topic here. I guess to set it up, I think the key word on, if I had to say anything about this slide, is the key word is disruption. If you think about last year, and we're already disrupting our world with doing Agile and DevOps and integrating mainframe with cloud and things like that. But we now work in an environment. We were just talking before the webinar started that it seems like this year we're working twice as hard or twice as fast as we were even in 2020. And I think that's largely driven, of course, by our customers, but organizations have really accelerated their pace of what they expect from software and what they expect to be able to deliver in market for all kinds of things, whether it's defensive, offensive strategies, being opportunistic, modernizing and doing a lot of things, especially within their mainframe environments. Jeff, any thoughts about this?
So it's been an interesting observation, having started working with the mainframe professionally back in the 80s. I've been able to see any number of trends that will sweep through the industry. Sometimes they're originated from the mainframe side. Maybe 30 years ago, IBM was promoting things like joint application development, or JAD, and then they became rapid application development, or RAD. And those techniques work very well for large-scale IBM shops, and then you'd see it applied to the early client server development. And then with the 90s, as things shifted, we began to see new techniques that would emerge from the distributed side. And one of the most important things I've learned in my career, early training when I was in a large enterprise, one of those big, broad programs that they take everybody through, was how to be creative and how to be open to new concepts. And one of the most important things I remember learning is they said, no matter what happens, anytime you introduce a new idea, expect resistance. If the idea is not originated by an individual, they'll always have some degree of resistance against it. And certainly we've seen that as I've worked in shops where we required mainframe development in the early part of the century, and Agile was gaining a great deal of momentum. And every mainframe shop was saying, oh my gosh, that can never work here. Agile just doesn't apply. There's so many reasons. And I'm now with my third company where we're bringing our development across the board, including mainframe, through an Agile transition. And the good news is that learning absolutely confirms that techniques like DevOps, even though it's a little bit newer, is going to apply equally well for all the same reasons. It's focused not on technology, but on people and process. And when applied correctly, DevOps provides enterprises tremendous advantages in what is a critical element here in this time of disruption, and that's time to market.
Yeah, I think it's spot on. It seems like we've entered an era where we don't by default say, well, that doesn't apply to the mainframe. We now know it. These things do, these techniques for creating software. Anna, you've joined at the midpoint of Jeff and my career and also seen a lot of changes. That myth is going away, that DevOps doesn't work within the mainframe.
It is, but that people still think that myth is true. Last year, I was in a webinar with Paul Casson at CompuWare, and we actually asked the question, what are your biggest concerns with your mainframe development? And 40% of them responded with a cultural issue, right? And one specific response really kind of epitomized this to me and shocked me. They said, our enterprise architecture group doesn't think that mainframe development can do DevOps. So this was last year, right? And of course, Paul and I spoke around that and tried to encourage them. And of course, mainframe can do DevOps. In fact, we see it done successfully, right? And we really think about the synergies that are gained from doing that by breaking down the silos, right? And automating across the technology stacks and making sure that we can support that agile development, as Jeff was talking about. The DevOps processes and tools and automation support agile development so that you can deliver value to your customers more quickly. And so, when it comes down to it, it's still a cultural issue, I think, that causes the problem in the transition. It's the core issue.
It's kind of that deprogramming we have to do for ourselves, right? unlearning those things we thought were true that aren't necessarily true anymore.
Yep.
You know, there's of course a huge driver in one of the reasons why we're talking about DevOps in the mainframe environment. And as businesses are accelerating their pace of operations and delivery of services to market, contact deliver services, all kinds of things that we see just in the last 9 plus 12 plus months that are relatively new, businesses are having to react very quickly. But at the same time, a lot of businesses have a large part of their enterprise that are operating on mainframe environments. So while we have cultural things to get over, and we obviously have tools and processes to help change and work with people in doing that, there is a lot of embedded value that's being delivered through mainframes. And we're kind of derelict in thinking that that should just stay by the side and go at its own pace and have other software be delivered more rapidly. Really, it behooves us. It's going to help all of us if mainframe moves into that world. So I know these are not new stats to you, Jeff, and you talk with a lot of customers about the widespread use of mainframes and how much business is really truly run today, and that's not going away.
Not at all. And this really does point to what is the balancing force in most of the IT organizations that I work with. If we think perhaps it is the stodgy, set in their ways mainframers who are resisting the idea of applying DevOps to their work, there's just as much resistance on the distributed and cloud side of leadership who look at something and go, whoa, mainframe, there's no reason, there's no way, there's no possible opportunity to introduce mainframe into our current DevOps planning and thinking. And almost all of them, certainly in any large enterprise of scale, very quickly run into how much their critical end-to-end operational value streams will have points where they depend on the mainframe, and the mainframe does nothing better. Nothing does it better than the mainframe. I come from the world of electronic payments processing. High speed, online, real time, get it right, make sure that it posts correctly, because nobody likes to see an incorrect line item on their billing statement. And while there are wonderful things that can be done with distributed systems to provide customer service and to allow customers to be self-service through web interactions, there's no platform that is as good in that real-time, online, high response time or low response time, high availability capability that the mainframe provides. And as some of these gee whiz numbers indicate, it continues to thrive in those spaces. In fact, Anna mentioned there was periods in the industry when everyone was forecasting that the mainframe will be dead. There were people who were saying the last mainframe will be unplugged in January of 2001. And that didn't come to pass for these reasons. And in fact, here in recent periods, what we are hearing from the industry analysts is the mainframe market is growing by about 4% between, it's got a compound annual growth rate of 4% here in the next several years because of, again, the disruption you mentioned, Mitch. We are now so much more dependent upon online transactions of various types. We may not be booking travel, but most of us are ordering a lot more things through online shopping. And I guarantee you that the large logistics companies are still dependent upon using mainframe processing to make sure that they can deliver all the packages that we ask for from our online retailers.
Mm-hmm. And I would add that when we're talking about that high-speed transaction processing, that's leading into the discovery that really the mainframe is a great platform for processing blockchain and doing machine learning. Right? And these are very modern thoughts, right? These are new leading edge technologies that we're all working on. And a lot of people aren't thinking about the mainframe as the place that that's happening, but it really is the best place for it to happen.
where you think about all the data that is connected, stored in, or as part of a mainframe architecture. And of course, what does machine learning need? Lots of data. It's a great place for that to be happening and applying those algorithms. And I love that you pointed that out, Anna. Is one of the things the mainframe has always been really good at, still excels today. And it's that high volume, low response time that Jeff was mentioning. Just the volume of transactions that you can process through a mainframe. It's exceptionally good at that. It's been that way, and it's gotten better every year, and that's why it does the workloads that it does. So I think we've pretty well established, it is a hugely valuable resource, and not only used today, but of course used more and more as we move forward. Let's talk about bringing DevOps to the mainframe. You were talking about create and evolve and maintain applications within mainframe environments. I think at one point we thought mainframes would just go into maintenance mode. Well, no, there's still applications being developed and a lot of new valuable capabilities being added. So the question being asked here is, how will you go about implementing DevOps at a broader scale that includes mainframes? We're going to talk about some strategies, but Anna or Jeff, are there any kind of examples or stories you might want to share with us from your working with customers that you've seen someone who's adopted DevOps?
Oh, no, I'll give you first crack at this one.
I would say, one of the important things is you have to start taking steps, right? One step at a time. And DevOps doesn't just happen. It's an ongoing process, right? You have to continuously improve. And so really, it's important to have leadership, not just buy-in, but sponsorship, right? If you can get sponsorship and drive from the top, that is one of the best ways to get started with DevOps. Besides that, there are lots of tools in the DevOps space that you can start with just to take small steps. So if we have a customer, for example, that has standardized on CompuWare Topaz Workbench, and they have brought our ProJCL Eclipse plugin into that space. So their developers can scan their JCL for quality right within their interface, or they can program it into a Jenkins pipeline. And so they've taken that step because it is a logical step on their path for a better DevOps environment. And so I would say, how do you go about it? Take one step at a time.
And that's certainly true. The other thing that I've noticed in just the recent handful of years, as DevOps has gained more energy in the marketplace and more energy in the conversations of executives at large enterprises, is that there has been a shift in how the enterprise is looking at their technology. Traditionally, it's been somewhat segregated. You'll still run into enterprises where the culture is mainframe on one side of the aisle, if you will, or one side of the hallway, and distributed in cloud on the other side of the hallway. And it's frustrated the business leaders because they don't run the business that way. They focus on their end-to-end operational value streams, that series of things that has to happen between the point that a customer asks for a good or service and the point where that good or service is delivered. And it might take advantage of every piece of technology in the enterprise before it's done, whatever it might be. If it's a large-scale manufacturing process, it may include shop floor systems. It might include online inventory systems, and frequently those will end up on the mainframe. And so the line of business leader who is invested in ensuring the shortest time to market for the delivery of that good that the shop floor is manufacturing and the inventory is provisioning is not interested in, we don't have good linkage between the mainframe and our Windows graphical user interfaces right now. The line of business, the people who pay the bills, are saying, I don't care about that. What I want to know is, what does my end-to-end process look like? And when you start deconstructing DevOps, that is what it is foundationally built on. The idea that there's a continuous delivery pipeline that is constantly bringing together all of the technologies at the right time so that we can create these operational workflows that are able to deploy quickly from design to production and then operate crisply in operation because the ops has been considered from the very beginning of design.
Mm-hmm. Spot on, spot on. Well, let's explore our 5 strategies that we're going to be talking about today, because the first one hits really well on something you were just talking about, Jeff, and that's around getting clarity about the why, quote unquote. Now, here, sounds rather simple, but I think one of the hardest reasons or hardest things to accomplish is really aligning the organization around why you're doing something. Oftentimes it can be an IT initiative, sort of IT for itself, but you just mentioned the business is counting on capabilities being delivered through whatever set of technologies that we're using, including mainframe environments, Windows computers, could be mobile devices, could be IoT sensors, right? But what they care about is our ability to deliver software rapidly and reliably. But sometimes when we initiate a program or the new shiny thing, we don't really be clear about what the real why is, for the business. Jeff, I'd like to hear some more about what you hear from business leaders of what they're looking for from IT and from software.
Well, I think you put your finger on it nicely in that what I hear from the business leaders is that they want the people in IT to have the same posture they have. And that is every conversation in the enterprise is a commercial conversation. As technologists, and I'm as guilty of this as anyone, as technologists, it's easy to get in love, to just have a romance with technology, and to let that romance start to pull your eyes away from what the real goal is. But the real goal for the enterprise is to remain competitive, to find opportunities for growth, and to ensure that there's stability so that employees can plan their lives and enjoy a quality of life and a career path that satisfies them. If there are things that I hear in talking to senior leaders, it starts on the line of business. When I'm talking to my IT peer, I'm not getting this sort of engagement, or if they are, I talk to the IT executive who says, I understand that every conversation is a commercial conversation. I'm having difficulty bringing that into conversation with my staff. And I think it is one of those critical cultural changes that DevOps is actually contributing to, because everything becomes focused on how can we get our critical value streams operating well enough that we have good chances for survival during a time of disruption, and then growth as we come out of that into the inevitable sunnier day that's ahead of us.
And I'd love to hear your perspective on this too, because you work with many customers and many organizations.
Yeah, well, actually, it was something Jeff said made me think of something I've learned as I've grown as a product manager. And something I think it was Marty Kagan said was that we need to fall in love with the problem. When you talk about technologists falling in love with shiny things, that's not the problem, right? If you fall in love with the problem, then you're always seeking to solve that problem. And I think that kind of speaks very well to the being clear about why. Your business, what is the real problem? Well, we need to deliver value to our customers more quickly. We need to deliver value to our customers with more quality, right? And in fact, we need to deliver more value to our customers than our competitors can deliver, right? So it all comes down to falling in love with the problem, and don't get distracted by the shiny things, right? It's easy to do. And I think as people are adopting DevOps, they look at tools and they look at solutions and think those shiny things are going to solve their problem. And alone, they do not. The tools and processes support your mental shift and your cultural change to solve the problem, which is driving value.
Excellent point. I like to think of the why as what are the outcomes the business is looking to achieve, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we talk about business results, so that means meeting this date at this budget or whatever, but really what's the outcome? What's the effect we're trying to have, either in market, with customers? It can be measurements that we talk about, whether it's reducing churn or improving our response time to customers, getting things delivered more quickly to them, getting a new capability like maybe contactless delivery out into market quickly. But this is an opportunity. DevOps is not a technology. It's how you create software, not what tools you do it with. Yes, you use tools to do it. Some that you have, some that you acquire and add to your tool set. But this gives us an opportunity to what is it that the business is really striving to achieve? Maybe that's changed significantly in the last 9 months, a year plus. Maybe we're very much still on our same strategy, but we've had to pivot or shift because of environmental conditions in the market or opportunities that have arisen. And this is a great chance to understand what's the business looking to have as an outcome and how can we contribute? So how could we implement DevOps in a way? So for example, you often hear about DevOps is how many deploys can I do per hour? Well, you could do 1,000 deploys of software per hour, but if it's the wrong software, it doesn't matter. If it's the wrong capability, who cares, right? It's maybe once a week is great, or once a month, or whatever the metric might be, but your ability to respond might be what's important. Be able to turn it around when you get a new requirement, something like that.
That's one of the beauties of automation. You now have the opportunity to be wrong much more quickly and many more times an hour with it in place if it's not correctly tuned.
It is. And if I could kind of add to the imperative why to think about DevOps and how that can make a difference for you, one of the things that I hear often is companies are saying, well, we're not an airline, we're a software company, or we're not a manufacturer, we're a software company. What do they mean by that? They mean that software is the key delivery capability that they have through almost every part of their process, especially if you've gone through this digital transformation that we're in the middle of really making everything digital. So now it's all run by software. So one of the things that organizations are looking to be able to do is respond more quickly in market. That also means experimenting. So you may want to be able to, if you're going to fail, let's find out quickly, but fail on a smaller scale and be able to adjust. And I've heard business leaders say things like, if I know when we have a problem that my software organization can respond quickly and adjust and fix it versus I'm going to have to wait, weeks or months to get a release out, I'm going to take more risks, measured risks, but things that I think will help the business. And that's another kind of why that may be important to your company as well. So it's a great time to be doing this. Let's, unless anybody had anything else to add, let's go to our next strategy. Anna, you were talking about the cultural shift, right? And culture can mean a lot of things. I think of culture as what's important to people in the organization. There's some are very much measurement centric. Some are very much interpersonal skills. Some are just to kind of get stuff done, whatever it takes, get it done. And there can be different things that in making that cultural shift, it can be quite a challenge. One of the big things, of course, started with Agile and happening with DevOps is many more cross-functional teams and breaking down the silos within organizations. Those are kind of things that we create. Those are not natural, things that occur in nature. We create those silos in our organizations, and they oftentimes work against us. What are some of the cultural things, Anna, you were talking about earlier? Any more thoughts on cultural shifts and things that can help us make those shifts?
Well, I think one of the big cultural shifts that is the elephant in the room for everyone is that we have very experienced mainframe programmers getting ready to retire. In fact, recently the IBM magazine said that 18% of mainframe staff is going to be retiring in the next 5 years. And we cannot ignore that. And what that leads to is bringing in more young people, right? And people are like Cameron Say and Wolfram Grease have been educating young people for the last 20 years in mainframe. We got to get those people hired in. And when you bring in a younger generation, of course, that brings a different kind of culture in as well, right? And one of the things we don't want to lose when we are bringing in the younger generation and losing the experienced generation who wants to go play with their grandchildren, right? They need to be able to move on and go on to that next stage of life, but we don't want to lose that experience. So now is the time to hire in those younger people and mentor them. They need to learn from those experienced programmers to be able to be the next hotshots coming into the company, right? So you've got company culture, but you've also got the personal culture of the shift in the personnel that's coming in for the mainframe. And so part of overcoming that, of course, is to team them up. Make sure you're assigning a mentor to the younger generation. Make sure you have your cross-functional teams. And stepping back to look at your silos. Do you have silos? I guarantee most companies do. In fact, I talked to a company recently who is a huge advocate of our automation solution and does lots of operational value stream automation. And I started asking the leader of that, so what about your DevOps practices? And he said, oh, that's another team. Just full stop. He just didn't care, right? And so there's a silo, right? And it's okay. Those happen. The question next to ask is, why do we have that silo, right? So it comes, again, we're coming back to clarity about why and a given problem, right? And so I think a lot of overcoming cultural issues is to be real, to ask pointed questions, and to really look at ourselves in the mirror, right? And where are we going? And why do we want to go there? And then what are we doing ourselves to either help that or get in the way of that? So I think really facing reality and looking at the problems is a very important part of the cultural shift. A lot of times culture shift doesn't happen because people are too comfortable and they just don't even want to, they don't care, right? So helping to find ways to put them in your teams and environments that make them more energetic, that they see what they can do. A lot of times an experienced person is re-energized when they can mentor a younger person, right? Because they've written that code a million times. They really don't care about the code or how they're writing the code or who they're working with at that point, right? They just do it. But if now they have a chance to give back and to guide the next generation, that can re-energize them and help with that culture shift.
Can be a real sense of satisfaction, personal satisfaction, helping someone else come up to speed, learn a new approach or technology. And that's also an opportunity to maybe, as you're bringing people in, make some shifts like moving to DevOps.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff, you're an experienced leader. I'm sure you've dealt with cultural shifts of other kinds. What kind of experiences have you had that you consider beneficial to helping this cultural shift?
Well, as I said at the very beginning, it is important to start from a posture of expecting resistance. It's inevitable. It's part of human nature, and it's neither. There's no reason to color it other than it will exist. In that context, then it behooves anybody who's going to initiate cultural shift within the enterprise to think about, how can I persuasively position what I'm proposing so that it is feeding to the internal motivations, the internal goals of those I want to influence. So, certainly when we talk to somebody with a line of business experience, or perhaps somebody in finance, certainly anybody in sales, when we talk about reducing time to market, that resonates immediately. May not be a set of conversations or a set of jargon that people in engineering are as familiar with. And so it does behoove us to slow down and actually talk through, well, why is time to market important? And clearly, as we've seen in the last year, there are compelling opportunities that can be exploited so that a company can grow explosively if they are nimble enough to take advantage of it. And even outside of a pandemic year, there are always new opportunities. There are new wants coming from the marketplace, new goals being expressed by customers that can give an organization commercial advantage that allows them to grow. And relating growth and the commercial impacts of shortening time to market to be more nimble than the competitor adjacent to you in the space, and how that leads to opportunity for the people who are in perhaps the roles that are not as familiar with the commercial value of time to market, is a critical way of expressing it. Mitch, while we're at this point, we're about halfway through our conversation. I just want to echo what Jade is encouraging our audience to do. We are excited about questions. We'd love to have you submit some questions. I think I actually see a couple coming in. Everyone, please think for a moment, and if there's something you'd like to hear from Mitch's point of view, from Anna's point of view, my point of view, please let us know.
Absolutely. I was just going to mention that too. I appreciate you doing that.
Well, we've worked together so well, we anticipate each other, Mitch.
We have. We've done a few of these together, all three of us. You know, one of the things about cultural shift, you know, it's not one of those light switches you just turn on or turn off and poof, you have a new culture. Oftentimes it's sort of kind of a threat. It's like, what are we doing wrong? Why do we need to change, right? Aren't we doing a good job? I thought we were doing well at what we do. And it really isn't that we're doing poorly. It's we want to continue to continuous improvement. We want to continue to work at our craft of creating and delivering software and adjusting to the conditions and times that we're in, whether it's technology or, you know, the business why of what we're doing. So, you know, there's some really great things around DevOps and Agile that just naturally bring people together, and that are these cross-functional teams, because the automation is connecting several parts of the process together so that it can be automated, because that improves your cycle time. So that may be involving the security team earlier in your process. It certainly can mean a lot of engagement with QA or people who may be testing, or the operations team, as Jeff mentioned. So let's talk about an adoption plan, you know, how to go about that. One of the fortunate things for many organizations, DevOps isn't necessarily a new thing. So you don't have to start out completely from scratch. Yes, you might have a different set of tools or environment, technology, processes you might have been using for creating applications, at least in part within the mainframe environment. But one of the best ways to get started is to seek out people in the organization or outside the organization who are doing DevOps, whether they're doing that for cloud native applications or on a journey for their mainframe environment, because there are so many learnings. If they've been doing DevOps for 2 or 3 years, why not take advantage of it? Let's leverage their learnings about how do you create a tool chain that's automated from a pull from the source code directory into an automated process to test code, maybe even deliver it into a production environment. And then how can you adapt those learnings to the tool set that you're using, or maybe even share some of those tool sets. I know, Anna, you were talking about IDEs and integrating things into your IDE. You know, we didn't used to think about an IDE in a mainframe environment, but that's much more commonplace, and you can do many things inside or in conjunction with the mainframe environment. Love to hear your thoughts on ways that organizations can not only learn from each other, but help adapt some of the tools and processes to adopt DevOps.
Well, I guess here's a good plug for devops.com, right? Join a community, right? Make sure you are looking at what other people are doing to learn from them. I would say before you start just doing everything everybody else is doing, take a look at your value streams, right? What do we mean when we say that? Look from end to end. Say, for example, how do you get requirements in to make your software changes? Maybe they're coming in through your website. Maybe they're coming in through a mobile app, right? Maybe that's maybe where the process begins, but then how many systems does it travel through to even get to development and then get back through out to production and operations, right? You have existing tools in place and you have existing value streams, right? So what you can do first is map the technologies that you touch, right? And see where you're going. Then you can go on to communities and say, okay, who's connecting the dots between these two programs? And how would I match the flow of that? So I think it's important because every site is so unique. You need to understand your site first, and then make sure as you're asking questions, you can ask specific questions to get really some actionable answers for yourself to take those steps.
Well, thank you for the plug, by the way. I have to thank you for that. So lots of great resources there, of course. Jeff, and thinking about adoption, one of the things I've learned in my career, maybe it's something you've adopted too, is when you think about creating an adoption plan, I always think about how can we show some benefit relatively soon in the process. Let's not take 6 months to do something before we see, oh, that's better that way. Let's look for opportunities where we do have issues that we might be able to improve, or we might be able to show a shorter cycle time in testing some software if we do some automation in the CI/CD pipeline area, things like that. But try look for some short-term wins, not short-term thinking, but short-term wins so people can see why making some changes is actually a good thing. Your experience?
It absolutely echoes that, Mitch. It's important anytime you're looking to do a cultural shift that you've got to establish and you've got to celebrate those early wins. You've got to make sure that not only are they happening, but that everyone that you need to influence, from executives down to people at execution level positions, are hearing that here's what we thought we would set out to do, here's what some of the results are, and here's some of the benefits that's demonstrating this was actually a good idea. It's one of the most compelling proof points to help us with that shift in attitude that's necessary for a culture change.
I'm going to throw in, because we're talking about culture and adoption, some good questions. Sherry has a really good question. She's asking about, sort of back to the elephant in the room, why many mainframers are retiring in this kind of really tight labor market. Schools are are they teaching mainframe skills? How does one tap into the skilled technical resources that might be attracting people to new shiny objects like cloud native versus mainframe? What are some of the attractors to bring new talent into the field? I know this is something you care a lot about, Anna.
I do, and mainframe skills I'm not hearing widely how they're taught in high school level, but certainly at the college level, there are schools that are teaching. In fact, we had Dr. Cameron say, he's from East Carolina University. He is a huge proponent of educating young people. And some of the attractors of doing this is that because there's so many people drawn to the shiny new cloud first things, there are less job openings there. But because there are so many people retiring from the mainframe community, there's openings and there's long-term job stability in mainframe programming. And this is one of the things that Dr. Say talks about, that if you will learn COBOL and get good at it, you will have a job for the rest of your life, right? And you're going to be able to find a job. There are challenges because when you're brand new and you just learned it and you have no experience, and everybody's looking for someone with 10 years of experience, it's hard to get your foot in the door. But that is a university that's East Carolina University is teaching mainframe. We also know that there's institutions in Europe doing mainframe programming. So you do have to look for them. But the attractor really is that here is a job market that's kind of open as long as you want to go after it.
Mm-hmm. And we're actually seeing self-selection occur. We're seeing young people. I was at one of my customers in Texas, a large regional bank in San Antonio, and went in to meet my contact there, who then brought in a young man. And I said, well, it's nice to meet you. What brings you into the meeting here with us? He's 22 years old. He says, I've decided that I want to be a systems engineer. I graduated with a computer science degree. I was working with the distributed group, but I saw that there was a lot of good, interesting projects going on with mainframe, and there was vacancies. They were looking to fill holes. And so I started studying, and as I applied, what I realized is exactly what Anna said. It's a great job. It works with all the technologies and techniques that I've been trained to, from Agile to DevOps to Java development to crypto, and so I want to be in this role because I think I can contribute. I think I'll have a good career here. And so that needs to be part of the adoption plan, because it can't be just the university side in trying to create supply. It can't be just the enterprises hiring, trying to create demand. They've got to unify together. And we do have challenges. We do have challenges because of the nature, the generational nature of where our technology experience has been. For whatever reason, the generation after mine, the Gen X people, I think it might be referred to by some sociologists, they didn't really get much mainframe training, and it's now the millennials who are stepping in, and they're bright, they're energetic, and they're engaged, and they need opportunity. That will make a great opportunity to create a DevOps culture from the ground up that'll embrace and include your mainframe.
Yeah, there's a really good question by Richard, who says, I'm from in the younger generation, earlier in my career and focused on automation. And Richard was asking about tools like Ansible and of course Zoe, which is open source for ZOS, and what parts they play in DevOps. Those are, I mean, fantastic. Zoe is a very popular open source tool that many organizations are using as part of their DevOps tool chain. And that brings up a whole nother topic of open source software and all the innovation that happens there that is applicable, and much of it is usable, whether it's the software itself or oftentimes the techniques that can be done. And that may be a place where folks that maybe didn't start in mainframe can bring some of those experiences to us as well by joining teams that are creating mainframe software. Well, let's go to our next strategy, measure what matters. I always look at, you can tell what's important to an organization by what they measure, right? You go look at what are the charts on the wall at that, or if maybe they don't have charts on the wall, maybe they're not measuring much, but what is it that we measure? It can be defects, it can be our reliability of delivering on time or on budget. It can be how frequently we're able, if we're working on something to improve at, how we are against reaching that goal. And so sometimes it's easy to adopt what we've traditionally measured, but we have to go back to that why and say, well, is that what's important to the business now? Maybe it is. Maybe we should be working on some other things. And we still want to do well at software quality, but maybe we want to work on delivering smaller releases so we can get new capabilities out more quickly. And that's something we can work on as part of a DevOps process. But measurement is really one of those double-edged sword. It can help you, it can also work against you sometimes if there's too much focus on that and not enough of a balance of the right things. Any thoughts, Jeff or Anna, about measurements?
Anna, you to start, and I'll finish up if I can.
Okay. Well, I think you hit it really squarely on the head, Mitch, when you said we have to go back to the clarity about why, so that you measure what matters, right? So you're not measuring what matters if you're not clear on your why. So, it's as you build that culture through and you're clear on your why and you made the cultural shift, keep it clear in your minds, right? And make sure that you're measuring based on what you've decided matters for your business. And sometimes you can't measure the big thing. Okay, are we delivering value better, faster? Well, you may have to break it down, right, by size. You might want to say, are we delivering more value that our customers have specifically asked for versus what we made up, right? So maybe it matters to you that you're doing more of what your customers are asking for. Well, now you can measure that, right? Or maybe it matters to you more that you've added much more functionality that was making your product more competitive, right? So you have to start making sure that as you are building your software, you're tagging it appropriately so you can measure, right? So just a few thoughts on that. Jeff, what were you
So,
thinking?
well, the thing I was going to add, I want to give a shout out to the Senior Vice President of Customer Care at ASG, Vernon Clemens, a really inspiring individual, both professionally and personally. And one of the things that he has brought to our entire management team is the concept of measure what you treasure, measure what's important. And it does help focus the intention of what you want to do with the DevOps adoption. And the really good news is, if you have a well-tooled DevOps strategy that includes having a value stream manager in place to measure your development, you can start measuring those elapsed times between different stages in the development. That gives you the opportunity to identify, here are places where I can make improvement that will reduce my time to market. You can start measuring your build processes and finding places perhaps where there are opportunities to tune the build process and reduce the burden it places on the organization in either manual work or automated work. And so the really good news story for people on this webinar with us is those sorts of toolings are now available, and they can chain together all of the technologies needed for the operational value streams so that you can measure across all of the different technologies you use: cloud, mobile, mainframe, whatever the case may be. I'm going to interject if I can before we run out of time. There's somebody who is asking a question about security, and unfortunately, in my view, I'm not seeing the asker's name, but it's a question. As a security engineer, where can I find more educational resources about development and security? Background was focused on web and mobile. That this is really like waving a red flag in front of a bull or a lollipop in front of a baby. This is the area that I spent most of my career in. It's a big question with a good, solid answer. Please reach out to me at jeff.charrington, CHERRINGTON, at ASG.com, and I will be happy to give you some links and leads there. That's a great place to start, and some great opportunities out there.
Yeah, there's more and more resources available about shifting left and doing more security work earlier in your software processes.
And you talk about a place in the industry where somebody can find a good, challenging job with lots of security, lots of opportunity, and good compensation. Man, that would be the space.
And lots of need. There's a increasing need exponentially, I think, sometimes. Well, let's finish our 5 strategies with really the idea of continuous improvement. That many of the concepts that we've talked about aren't just go do it and done, right? It's about you may be focusing or measuring on one part of your software delivery process. That may shift over time. Maybe 6 months later, a year later, or whatever, you're now working on a different aspect of it. You might have been working on time to release software. You might be working on quality. You may be working on security and getting some of the backlog taken care of, or addressing some new security things you're finding with new tools or techniques, things like that. So it really is kind of back to the quality process. It's important to adopt this idea of continuous improvement, because we can never be done at improving how we create software and deliver value. You talk about the value stream across the organization to the business. It really is adopting that. We can always get better. What's the next challenge we want to take on? Jeff or Anna?
I'll jump in. You know, Jeff was pointing out about measuring the elapsed time on things, and so there's always little places you can look to improve. And that's one of the great things about a value stream management platform, to be able to find those spots for improvement. But one thing I would like to raise is, don't just always look at failures for opportunities or problems for opportunities. It's also important to look at what you're doing successfully to see if you can do that even better. I think about that from a sprint retrospectives and a Scrum development team. That's one of the things you do is, what are we doing great? What could we do a little better than we're doing now? And what what do we really need to fix that's broken, right? So there's, when you're measuring your elapsed times for different parts, that's a place where you're probably doing okay and you can do better. But then Mitch, as you said, have you shifted focus on what you are measuring and what you are trying to improve? And look both at where you're not doing so great and also where you think, hey, we're doing okay there. Well, could you do better? Because if you're doing okay everywhere, then you might think you don't have to improve anymore, and don't get trapped there because you can always improve.
And it's important to understand that if you're not looking to improve there, you can almost be guaranteed one of your competitors or more are.
Absolutely.
It's a very competitive marketplace. The pressures of the last year during the pandemic has really increased that competitive drive, because it's necessary to survive in this environment. And then those that do it well will not only survive, but be positioned to thrive as the markets begin to loosen up.
Absolutely. Well, I'd like to have us talk just a little bit about the DevOps imperative. When you think about, so we've mentioned some of the technologies here about IDEs, using Eclipse and VS Code, even containerization is something that you see increasingly applying. I mean, for example, with Red Hat OpenShift, we talk about open source software with Zoe for API integration. GitHub, has the Open Mainframe project for source code repository. ASG, of course, you all have your enterprise orchestrator. It really is sort of encompasses both the cloud and the mainframe environment. So thinking across platforms, how you can orchestrate delivering software. Can you say a little bit about enterprise orchestrator and just give us an example of how that might look?
Oh no, that's your baby.
Well, that's kind of a wide question. We have most of our customers do have a connection to the mainframe still. In fact, that's where our sweet spot is to help customers who have mainframes really make their transformation and grow into the cloud. We're talking to several customers now who are just starting to think about cloud and realize, hey, can your solution work in the cloud? And the answer is yes, right? But they can tend to still get stuck in that they're getting stuck on the mainframe side and not feeling like they can get out of the mainframe into the cloud. And so I think ASG Enterprise Orchestrator is really helpful in that space, and we're helping customers because when you chain together and you automate your entire value stream from end to end, no matter what you're doing with your mainframe, whether you're investing more in it, whether you're scaling back or you're getting rid of it completely, honestly, Enterprise Orchestrator can chain the entire thing and help make sure that your business rules are always maintained, right? Underneath the covers, your tasks may change, the place you're storing the data might change, the application you're using to make the changes might change, but your business rules are locked in inside Enterprise Orchestrator, and that's the important part about that.
And Enterprise Orchestrator is broad enough in its scope that it can trigger the steps in a continuous integration, continuous delivery pipeline on mainframe as easily as it does on distributed. And so consequently, we do think we've got something unique that the market is really very strongly interested in, so that they can focus more on those end-to-end value streams as opposed to isolated technology silos.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And you've got some great resources on your ASG.com website about Orchestrator and DevOps and some of the tooling that we've talked about today and adopting DevOps. So we're almost at the top of the hour. One of the things that we wanted to provide everyone, if you'll click here, no, just kidding. There's a link in your chat where you can download a lot of what we've talked about and more in this 5 crucial DevOps strategies for cloud and mainframe report that Accelerated Strategies did, commissioned by ASG Technologies. So please check that out. A lot of good resources in that report, as well as on the ASG site. So I hope you'll check that out. We had someone ask about, I'm a single developer, what can I do to help with the transformation? So a lot of things. There's a lot of great tools. As you mentioned, DevOps.com. There's also SecurityBoulevard.com is one of our online sites that has a wealth of information about security. that you can check out. So I do want to let everyone know our winners of our gift card before we hit the top of the hour here. Our 4 winners are Giovanni C, Hector M, Tina M, and Tyler A. The folks at DevOps.com, MediaOps will get in touch with you about how to get those Amazon gift cards. Anna, Jeff, any parting thoughts before we wrap things up here today?
Mitch, thank you very much for the opportunity to talk to your audience. We're always excited to be involved with DevOps.com and are always very stimulated by the questions we hear from you and we hear from the participants in the webinars.
It's a pleasure having you here. Go ahead.
I just want to say, we didn't get to answer all of the questions that came through, but you can reach out to Jeff or myself. Mitch, I think we have our email addresses on the next slide even, but you guys can reach out to us if you have any further questions. We'd love to speak with you. And Mitch, thank you for hosting this. It was a great conversation.
It is a great pleasure working with you both, and it's an exciting topic, and I know that we're helping people in the process. You talked about mentoring and helping others. This is a great way to do it. So glad to be contributing with both of you in that process. So any questions we didn't get to, we have those questions. We'll probably provide them to Jeff and Anna and can reach out to you. Thank you very much for your questions. We are at the top of the hour. I want to honor everybody's time. Thank you for joining us today. Email will be sent out with a link to the recording and the slides. We'll have a link to this ebook report that you can download. Your hour of your time is super valuable. We're very honored that you spent it with us. Have a great rest of your day.